Once upon a time, I put together a TBR for January of 2024 that was so exciting, filled with books that I couldn't wait to read. And then I took a wrecking ball to it. Hey everybody, welcome back to BookTube. I'm Brian Bell. It's great to have you here. So we are talking about January 2024's TBR. Now, I've alluded over the last several weeks that I had something rather different and rather strange in mind, and today's the day I get to share it with you. This is either going to be one of the greatest reading months I've ever had, or this is possibly the dumbest idea I've ever come up with. I'm kind of thinking it's going to be somewhere in the middle, but I guess we'll see as we get through it. So here's the premise. I went to 7 BookTubers, all of which I subscribe to, all of which I highly suggest if you're not already subscribed to, that you do as well. There'll be links in the description to all of their channels. So I contacted each of these 7 BookTubers and said, hey, I have this really weird idea for a challenge to myself for January 2024. What is a book that you DNF'd? And that's what we're doing, gang. I asked them, give me a book that you DNF'd for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you just weren't feeling it at the time. It doesn't matter. Give me a book that you did not finish and probably will never go back to. Maybe you'll go back to. You don't really know, but it's certainly not on your top of the to-do list. And here's what we've come up with. The first book came from Mike from Mike's Book Reviews. If you've watched BookTube at all, you know I'm such a huge fan of his channel. I asked Mike, what's a book you DNF'd? Mike doesn't DNF a lot of books, but he said, here's one for you. It's The Three-Body Problem by Leo Sushin, I think is how you pronounce the name. I'm not sure. I'll probably go back and take a look later. If I got it wrong, I'll cut this part out. But let's face it, I'm probably not going to cut this part out. The Three-Body Problem. It's sci-fi, I know that. Of all the 7 books that are on this list, and there's 7 of them, by the way, of all the 7 books, this is one that was actually already on my TBR. So we're kind of starting this list with the one that I may have read anyways. So let's just get that one out of the way. Mike from Mike's Book Reviews has suggested The Three-Body Problem, and we're going to go into January and find out what that book's all about. Hi, video editing Brian here. I made myself a deal that if I made one more video and forgot to ask people to like and subscribe to the channel, I would come back, throw a smoking jacket on from the 1970s, and go ahead and do that. And here we are. Please like this video, and please subscribe to the channel. Now back to our show. The second booktuber that I reached out to is Tori Tekken from Tori Talks. She's the author of the brand new book called The Bloodstones, which is right over here on the shelf. It's fantastic. Everybody should go read it. I said, Tori, I need a book that you DNF'd. And Tori doesn't really DNF a ton of books either. And Tori offered up The Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. I don't know what this is about at all. For most of these books, I haven't read the back cover. If you've watched BookTube a little bit, you know that my preference is to kind of go in quite blind to what the book's all about. If I happen to know the premise, that's fine, but I don't really want to know plot details. I don't really want to know too much about the characters. So I don't really know what The Prince of Thorns is about. I think it was one of Mark Lawrence's first books. I am a Mark Lawrence virgin, so to speak. I'm sure that's going to come across well on the internet. I mean, nothing could happen on the internet when you say something like that. Anywho, I've never read any Mark Lawrence book, so that's going to be the first one. Thank you, Tori, for giving me that book you DNF'd. I will let you know what I think. Okay, so this third one might be the most scary on the list. Yeah, it's Dr. Philip Chase, author of the Edan trilogy, and he's come up with a book that I've never heard of. I don't know if I need to get a ye olde English to modern English dictionary to pull this one off, but go figure. Ask a medievalist professor a book that he couldn't get through or chose not to get through, and he's going to come up with something. And Philip is offering up a book called The Worm Ouroboros by an author that I've never even heard of, E.R. Edson, I believe is the name. I think this book was written over 100 years ago. It might be in the time of Tolkien. I'm not sure. I know if it's something that Dr. Chase has on his shelf, there's a more than likely chance this book is on nobody's TBR. If you've read this book, by the way, let me know in the comments. I don't know what I'm getting up to with this thing. I'm very, very cautiously interested in this because, yeah, this seems just very weird. So thank you, but wow, Dr. Chase, you, I guess, understood the assignment here for a book to put on my TBR. That is daunting. Okay, for the next book, I had to go to the undisputed, undefeated, heavyweight champion of BookTube DNF. Yep, it's Andrew from Andrew Wizardly Reads. Hey, Andrew. Yeah, so for Andrew, this would be probably a pretty simple experiment, right? Because he's famously known for DNFing books that he's just not feeling, and he does it pretty early on in the book. That's why I'm pretty optimistic maybe about the book that Andrew suggested. It's called The Big Ship at the End of the Universe by somebody named Alex White. I've not heard of this book at all. Honestly, Andrew probably could have taken a dart and just thrown it at his bookshelf and hit a book that he DNF'd. So I don't know if he's intentionally trying to attack me with this book or if it was just any one of many that he said, I don't know, I'll just pick one at random. Here you go, Brian. So that book I'm going to take a look at in January. By the way, I meant to say at the beginning of this, we're going to finish all of them. I will not DNF anything. That's why it's called the DNF Challenge. We're getting through all these books, even the very unknown one that Dr. Chase has offered up. So Andrew's book, The Big Ship at the End of the Universe, will be read in January. This next booktuber, I love his channel a ton. It's Josh from Red Fury Books. Man, this guy's just got such a catalog of a reading resume. And I asked him the other day, Josh, I'm doing a BookTube DNF challenge. Can you provide a book that you DNF'd, somewhat recently? And he came right to it and he said, I don't really DNF a ton of books, but one of them is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I don't know anything about this book. I know it's pretty popular. I've seen plenty people on BookTube say that they've read it, but I don't know the premise. I don't know the characters. I have no idea who this author is, but it will be read in January. So thank you, Josh from Red Fury Books, for this book. I'm not too unexcited for it because it is fairly mainstream popular. So maybe there'll be a little nugget in there for me that for whatever reason just didn't land with you. The next booktuber that was kind enough to offer me a suggestion is Madison Goodyear. And I asked Madison, I need a book that you DNF'd. And she doesn't DNF a ton of books either, but she did offer up Clive Barker's Weave World. Here's something that not only do I not know anything about, I've never even heard of this book. I've heard of Clive Barker. I believe he's had books adapted into movies. I think so. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to let me know how I've completely missed the mark on Clive Barker all my life. But Weave World, Madison, I don't know what it's about. I'm excited to find out. Kinda? I don't know. I pushed a ton of books out of January that I was going to read Shogun in January, like the masterpiece of literary fiction in anticipation of the TV and Netflix adaptation. Instead, I'm reading these crazy books. But Weave World by Clive Barker is on the list for January's DNF Challenge. And the seventh booktuber that I reached out to is Kayla from Kay's Hidden Shelf. If you're not already subscribed to her channel, absolutely go do it. She's wonderful. And again, she said she doesn't DNF a ton of books either, but thank you, Kay, because you offered up a novella. And that's going to make this very potential miserable month of January at least a little bit shorter in its execution of finishing these books. The novella that she's offered up is called Nyare. I've never heard of the novella. I've never heard of the author. I'll put the author up here when I show the book because I haven't even looked it up yet, but I don't even know what this is about. Clearly, it must be, if a novella gets DNF'd, something may be amiss in the state of Denmark, so to speak, if somebody's not getting through a novella. So January 2024, will it be a month of excellence? Will it be a month of what have I done? We're going to find out together. That's why we're the BookTube community. I'm going to read these books so you don't have to. Call me the sacrificial lamb if you must. But I'm going to find out for myself what 7 books of BookTubers that I really do look up to and that I respect DNF'd. And then we'll go back into our normal TBR in February. By some chance, if I get through these books, somehow before the month of January is over, then we'll seep our February TBR into the end of January. But right now, all of my focus and all of my attention is going to be on getting through these DNF'd books so we as a community can find out what they're all about. Of course, we have to do one for the road today, and our one for the road is going to fall right in line with what we're sharing here, and that's expectations. Now, any reasonable person would be going into this January TBR with very, very low expectations. And to some extent, I think our attitude kind of follows what our expectations are. If we're expecting the worst, we kind of have a mindset ready for it, and it may not open our minds up to the best opportunity to find, like I mentioned, those little nuggets that I think we're going to find in some of these books that otherwise we may have missed. So one for the road is about expectations, but also your attitude when you think about expectations. If I expected all these books to be the best books I ever read, and it turns out they're totally mediocre or less than mediocre, worse than average, then my attitude might be just kind of down about the month. But I'm going into it exploring. I'm putting on a miner's hat, so to speak, and I'm going into these caves I'm going into DNF cave. And I guess we're going to find out, but I'm doing it with a smile on my face because I don't know what's going to happen here. It might be terrible, but it might not be terrible. And I guess that's the point of this one for the road. Until you do it, you don't know. So let's keep our expectations manageable. Don't necessarily set them so high, but don't feel like the worst is going to happen because I think we're going to be surprised on some of these. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. It happens to be Christmas weekend coming up. So for all of you who celebrate, Merry, Merry Christmas. I hope you have a fantastic holiday. If you are somebody who struggles with the holidays, and we've talked about this before, you're not alone. There's tons of people out there that are in your same boat that kind of feel a little bit down on the holidays. I want you to know from me personally out to you, wherever you may be in the world, I'm here for you. I'm thinking about you. I am sending you positive energy. And here's your fortune.